It's funny. I used to be the biggest hater of AI. I would never use it. I told people never to use it from a content standpoint, and now I use it every day in my content workflows.
Ryan, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about some things today.
Super excited to do this. I mean, I was very excited to chat with you because you started out by telling me that you used to hate AI and you would tell people not to use it. And now on the internet, you're one of the biggest promoters of AI, especially for marketing and content and so much more. So I'd love to maybe just start there. Why did you hate AI? Like, who hates AI? Why do you hate AI?
I think at its core, I probably was just scared to evolve as a marketer. I was comfortable in my skin of doing it the old fashioned way. But there also was kind of that component of like in the early days, it just felt like kind of like a plagiarism machine. Like it would just go out and find stuff that already exists, slap it together, and like coming from a very, very deep content background, that felt.
By the way, that's kind of still true. Kind of still true.
Oh, yeah. I've gotten better about it because I know how to source the inputs so it pulls from my actual work, not Joe Schmo on blog X. I was a big hater. Didn't have a ChatGPT membership till probably the middle of 2025. And then
By the way, that's crazy. So for this would be a first, right? So we've never had anyone who's got into AI as late as you have, but it is so impressive how big your ramp has been and all the stuff that you're going to show us today. It's going to be mind blowing for everyone to see. Okay, so ChatGPT account mid 2025.
yeah, I mean, I didn't get the hype of it. Like I said, it felt like a plagiarism machine. It still kind of does if you use it the wrong way, which a lot of people are. But I just didn't understand how it fit in my workflow. I mean, I'm an input output guy, so like I just didn't get where it would be an input to make good output. And then I got laid off from Whimsical midway through 2025. So actually, like about 6 months ago. And as I was interviewing, as I was talking to people, like the number one thing that'd come up would be like, yeah, you're great at content, you're great at doing stuff, you're great at growth marketing, you just are missing that AI component. And it was kind of just stuck in the back of my brain. And it kind of became like I'll show you guys to dive into AI and just went both feet in, building from Lovable, building workflows, building N8N, just anything that I could level up on, I started doing. And it helped to have just like, I've always had this builder mindset. I've built Zapier flows 10 years ago when it was just getting started. So like I've always had a builder mindset. And I think just having that already inside of me and knowing as much as I know about content helped me ramp up super fast.
Okay, let's talk about what happened in these job interviews. So you left a company and now you're applying for other places. How did the conversation come about? Because again, like I've looked at your background, it's solid. Like you've worked at great companies and tons of experience, like super solid background. What were the questions that they were asking when it came to AI?
I think it was just like simple questions like how do you use AI in your day-to-day workflow? How have you used it? What's some wins you've seen? And I just didn't have great answers to tell them. I do now, but back in the day, it was just like, well, I just kind of use ChatGPT to talk to it and that kind of stuff. Nothing like that's like the workflows I'm building now. Very, very basic, which I think a lot of like marketers are stuck in that phase of just talking to ChatGPT before like unlocking a lot more kind of powerful workflows that they can build. And yeah, and it just was odd because you're right. I had a solid background. It was just like, it was that missing point. And it also was just like a really weird time in the job market. Like I talked to senior people just like me that were getting like to final interviews and then the job would just disappear. Like they wouldn't even offer it to anyone. So it was a combination of just being in a really weird time and having to stand out with that AI component that I didn't have just made the process so much harder.
You heard the feedback and then how did you start? Like how does someone now, mind you, I will say that you were a technical marketer, right? So maybe you didn't have a software engineering degree, but you were the guy who built systems. So it's not like you weren't technical. Like this is stuff that you could do. But still, I'm curious. Like maybe walk us through like how did you get into it? Where did you start?
What really kicked off like the deep learning was I was in a interview and they were like propose some like AI workflow that you could build and propose like kind of a new product that we could run from it. And I had enough time to be like, oh, I can sit down, learn AirOps, learn Zapier, learn all these different things really, really quickly. Cause like I knew the inputs. I just needed to go find them and get them and organize them and all that stuff. And I built like a really, really rudimentary workflow that I probably could go back and still use today, where it took a bunch of LinkedIn shares from like people like Ross Simmons and like people who are out in the world, have a very distinct voice, and would like distill it down, and then it would allow you to kind of like do internal employee advocacy. So like if you had a bunch of employees at your company, you wanted them to share some report, but you didn't want to write 50 different shares, you could run it through that. It would key in on their voice, their point of view, their tone, and their audience, and just write shares. And I did that in like a weekend and just up leveled so quick just with that. And then it was just kind of just off to the races. I started building stuff for Lovable. I built a resume review site, just kind of because I had time to do it, just to help other people in the space. That's how I learned Lovable. I learned Supabase, all those things. So it's just like, I think what kind of makes me different than a lot of marketers is I'm like build first and I show off what I build. And like that's how I've been able to like upskill quickly, because I'll get feedback on it, and it also kind of build a nice community around me.
And so Lovable is a vibe coding tool. Literally, you write a prompt and then it builds you things, builds you a website or whatever you want. And Supabase is really exploded in popularity. It's a database for most web pages or web applications. You're going to need a database. And it seems like Supabase is the one that everybody is choosing. And okay, so this is really interesting. And I want to dig in on this idea of like you build first, because this is also kind of unconventional in the sense that, a lot of like most marketers they're not the builders, right? So they work with engineers, they work with other teams. And so they might be the strategists, the idea people. And I think like maybe you had that inclination from the beginning, but what's happening to the world is because these tools make it possible, everybody can be a builder now. And so I like this idea. I mean, you called it builder first. I think that's the right way to talk about it. It was great. It's almost like you wanted the world to always work that way. And now like the tools are there.
It's
And
exactly what it was. I've always been a builder. My first job out of college, I built a tech review site on WordPress and got it to like 50,000 monthly organic sessions, and then just shut it down because I burnt out on it. But like I've always been a builder, and like that's what I've always kind of like jumped into, of like, oh, I can do this. That's cool. Let me push it as far as I can. And like that's how I've kind of upskilled really quickly with the Zapier stuff. The AI building is just like, oh, I can do this now. Let me see how far I can push it before I kind of like lose my marbles.
let's talk about another thing. So I think the theme that I want everybody to get here is that it's now possible to be a builder and everybody's a builder. So this is happening not just in marketing. We're talking about marketing, but it's every role. And it's also possible for you to go from hating AI to being the biggest promoter. But let's talk about another thing. You're the first person that I heard using this term, which is content engineering. I've heard of content marketing. What the heck is content engineering?
So I think it's got a lot of different definitions. It's just that kind of like buzzword, like GTM engineers out right now. I think there's a lot of different definitions that you'll hear 10 different things from 10 different people. But how I define it, and I think it's uniquely set up in my career to be a really good content engineer because of this, is it's knowing the inputs, the outputs, the systems, what everything needs to kind of like come together to like create content, a video, a blog post, a thought leadership piece, and how you kind of like move things around to make sure those kind of actually outputs are useful. But it's also that automation thing, like knowing how to build things that take 20 minutes to run through a Zapier automation instead of having to ping 15 different people to get all those inputs. In my mind, it's that automation base with the content experience that I've had for like 12 years put on top. Because like the other part of it is like where I've seen some content engineers kind of like fail is like they can build the systems, but the outputs are never going to be 100% ready to go, and they don't know how to get them to 100% ready to go. I have that skill where I can take something for like the webinar flywheel they're going to talk about in a second. Some of the outputs are 75% done, but it's a lot closer than 0%, and getting it to 100 I can do in an hour or two with Claude, because I know how blog posts should be structured, how a video should be cut, what we need for all these things. So I think that's a lot of what people are missing too with the content engineering, is you have to like, AI can get you pretty far there, but you still need that human touch of like being a good content marketer to get it all the way.
Okay, so let's talk about an example. So, what is an example? I mean, yes, automations. You're going to use more automations, but is there something that, and I know we're going to show a demo, which is going to show us this, but just like maybe just a simple thing that people can understand. Oh, I get it. That's with a content engineering mindset. That's what that might look like. And otherwise it might look another way.
Yeah, so we'll use the webinar repurposing. Most webinars are done, ton of time put in, ton of money to get people in, and then they just go into the ether. No one does anything with it. And like a content engineer, myself at DemoStack, we don't have a ton of budget or people to go out and write a ton of thought leadership content. So seeing as a content engineer looking at that, I'm like, oh, there's a ton of good content trapped in this webinar. How do we get it out? And usually it would be like, hey, hire a junior marketer, go through, have blog pitches, have all these things done. It'll take a month to get done. With this flywheel I built, you dump the transcript in, you get an analysis of the webinar, you get 3 different blog pitches that are ready to go to Claude, you get a clip doc that you can dump into Descript and it'll clip for you, and then you get a social pitch doc, which again you can dump into Claude and expand to like a full thing. And that takes 10 minutes to run as long as you have the transcript. And then the rest is just kind of like finessing it for ready for publishing.
Okay, so that's pretty mind blowing. I feel like everyone's want to go hire a content engineer. Hey everyone, just a quick pause on today's episode to tell you about my day job. In addition to This New Way, I'm the CEO of a company called Fellow.ai, and Fellow is an AI meeting assistant. It joins all your meetings, it summarizes them, tracks the actions and the decision, and does that better than any other tool that you've seen. We've spent a ton of time making sure that the meeting notes and summaries and action items that come out of Fellow are the most accurate, the most precise. It beats any human. You have to try it. But in addition to that, what makes Fellow different is that it is the first AI note taker built from the ground up with security and privacy in mind. This means that you can use it for all your meetings, not just the customer-facing ones, but also the sensitive ones, things like one-on-ones and executive team meetings and those QBRs and everything in between. It's got really good judgment. So, for example, if you start a meeting and you're talking about some social stuff that you don't really want on the record that's going to get emailed to everyone afterwards, Fellow just knows. It just doesn't include those things. Or say you have something that you talked about and later on you realize, oh man, that shouldn't have been there. It makes it really easy. You can go back to the meeting, select that part, delete it, and then it's gone from the record. It connects to all of the other tools you use in the organization, whether that's Slack or Asana or HubSpot or Salesforce or Linear or Jira or Confluence, whatever it is, Fellow integrates with all those things. I think the best part is that Fellow also acts as an AI chief of staff. Because it sits on all the meetings and the conversations that you have access to, you can ask it really cool questions such as, what are the biggest opportunities in my company? What are the bottlenecks in engineering? And Fellow just pieces together information, sees trends, and it can answer those sorts of questions. It can even do things like, hey, based on all of the one-on-ones that I've had with this particular person, can you create them a performance review? And it can do things like that too. And the sky's really the limit. What I really wanted you to do is have the opportunity to try out Fellow, check it out, and we're making a special offer available to all our listeners. So just go to fellow.ai/thisnewway to try Fellow. There's a discount code in there for you if you decide to continue with it. Either way, I would love for you to try it and let me know what you think. And with that said, let's go back to the episode. Okay, everybody knows they should take their webinars and produce all this content from it. The reality is most people don't do it because it would take so much time, even for the junior content marketer. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be super fun.
It's not easy. Yeah. And knowing how to extract that information from a big piece of content. Like, that's why this webinar Flywheel has like 28 or 30 steps. It's like you have to break it down into a lot of big pieces before you can like build it up into something that's actually shareable.
Okay. So, after saying that, I think that's such a good teaser that we should just jump into the demo and start showing it. So it almost feels like you've built this content factory.
That's exactly what it's called.
Oh, is it called Content Factory? That's
It's called the Content Factory. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
That's what I've been calling it, just to kind of give it a better name than the webinar flywheel, because that means nothing to people.
Some people might think that, okay, this is a content factory. It sounds like AI slop, but I don't see it that way. It's great content in the form of a webinar. The reality is that most people are not going to want to watch an entire webinar. It's just very long. And so you just have to meet people where they are. Some people like a newsletter. Some people like clips. You just have to meet them in the way that they want to consume your content.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it is. It's like you can't expect someone to sit through a 45-minute webinar to get value from your you put it like I said, you put a ton of time, you put in a ton of effort, you spent money on this. Make it go the distance instead of just being like, time to go do another webinar, which so many companies do. It's like a 2-week cadence of like webinars, and then nothing happens in between. And you've got such a good piece of chunky content that you can turn into a bunch of stuff. And like I think what also makes me a really skilled content engineer is I know how to repurpose stuff by hand. So I know what you have to do with the AI and the workflows. Like I've written extensively about like repurposing and having like a repurposing mindset, and that's part of it as well.
Amazing. So, okay, that was a lot of hype. So, this thing is really cool. So, let's Oh, actually before we show it, so you're going to show this to us in Zapier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just walk you through. I can't show off the prompts just because they're a little bit too proprietary right now, but I can talk you through what each thing does.
Totally. That makes sense. So, before you show this to us, this is another kind of like fun thing. I mean, you can share your screen and we can kind of talk through it. But when you posted about this, it went mega viral because it's insanely cool. But one of the other things you said in this post was that you used to be an N8N person, and then you found yourself jumping back to Zapier, and that caused all sorts of stir in the marketing world. The CEOs of both Zapier and N8N commented on your post, and they were kind of like going at each other a little bit in a funny way. And yeah, so what's up with that? So N8N is, I mean, a lot of people are talking about it, but you're back to Zapier. So why is that?
I still think N8N is a valuable platform. It's just not where I want to build. To be honest, I believe in the longevity of like Zapier right now. They've been around for 10 years. I don't want to build a bunch of my architecture stuff for N8N to get bought by something or for something to happen. I know they're going to be around for a little bit, but just like I've used Zapier for so long, and like I kind of just believe where Wade's going with the whole vision, and I'm having everything in one platform. So tables, agents, the zaps, the interfaces, which I love the interfaces, those things that just power up all your zaps so much faster. It's just nice having it all in one spot. And like with N8N, I found you had to do a lot of kind of taping together of stuff just to make it work. And like one other thing I didn't love was it was like almost too open. Like you could kind of do anything. And having these limitations makes you really think about how you build your workflows without building a ton of different kind of like credit wasting steps. That's about it on that one.
That makes sense. And so, of course, Zapier, N8N are all workflow tools. We talk about them a lot on the show. They are, I mean, a lot of AI it's just automations have always been around, but it just with LLMs, you can just make decisions in these prompts, or you can create output in ways that you weren't previously able to. So it just makes them 10x more valuable. And so, yeah, but all of these workflow tools are exploding. And so, everybody, if you haven't started to build workflows with Zapier or N8N, I mean, you need to get on that. This is the future. And then if you want to be a content engineer, got to start there too.
Yeah, even simple ones. Like I built a two-step Zap yesterday that just listens to our LinkedIn feed and dumps it all in a Notion doc. So I can go and use that as reference for future shares. Because I used to just be like, hey, what's happening in Note? Or I'd go look at our LinkedIn and be like, hey, use this as a reference point for the next shares. And now I've got this nice database. And it's just small things like that that kind of bring all your context into one spot is also helpful. And you don't have to build these 30 step Zaps either.
That's fair. And it's also good for people to hear that, in that it doesn't take a lot. You can start with a super small workflow with 2 nodes. That's it. 2 nodes. Listen, paste it in Notion.
Yeah. It's nice because, like, as you know, like ChatGPT and like some of the LLMs don't love playing with LinkedIn. So getting them into a platform you can control and pull from is really helpful.
If you have the workflow, I'd love to see it.
Now you can see the input, right? The interface.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let's just talk through this. And then this is a simple interface you can build with Zapier, and it has a link that you can click. So I just have it kind of up in the background. And then whenever I want to run a webinar through it, I just drop in the title, drop in the transcript, so the TXT file, hit submit, and it runs. And that's all you have to do. And it makes it so much easier than like trying to like trying to like put it in Slack or trying to put it in a Notion doc. And when you're using like TXT files or like actual any files that you want to get analyzed, I found that this works a lot better because you're just giving Zapier the entire file instead of like trying to read a Notion doc.
Yeah. So we still have a lot of people. I mean, everybody should watch the podcast, but for everybody
Oh yeah.
who is listening, what we are seeing right now is an interface. So it's
Just a simple interface. Yeah.
it's just like a website. It says
Yeah.
webinar flywheel, and then just two fields. You put the title of your webinar, you upload a transcript, you press submit. And so this was built with Zapier. So that's really cool.
Yep.
You can actually build these interfaces that are interfaces to the workflow that's working in the background to do the work.
Yeah. And it's really nice when you're like building stuff for people outside of kind of your team or like you're not controlling it because you can just send them to this and say, drop your transcript here, drop your information here. And then they don't have to deal with Zapier. They don't have to deal with Notion. Everything just kind of
Yeah.
flows down into that. So that's where I've seen.
And you can make it so that people don't need a login, right? So you have the Zapier login.
Yeah. I mean, this is what it's live on the web. You can just do it, just drop it in there, and yeah, it's really nice. I've seen Zapier like promote that you can do like Stripe payments through that and like intake forms and stuff like that. I'm like, this is fantastic because I just feel like you'd have to almost do a Squarespace type thing to build this out in the past. If you're just collecting this simple information, it used to be so much more involved and like you'd have to get a domain. And I'm just like, I can send people to here and it's good to go.
Yeah, love it. Very cool.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump into the actual Zap. You can still see this. So this is what we just talked about. It's a Zapier interface for submission created. Once you drop that in there, it automatically runs. Like I said, this takes like maybe like 7 to 10 minutes to run just because there's a lot of steps and I don't really want to rush it through. Like it runs in the background. It's not something that I want like in 5 minutes.
Sorry, which part runs the entire workflow?
The entire thing.
10. Okay.
Yeah. Even shorter if it's on a good day. But starts with the interface, pulls all the information from the interface, creates a new data source item in this thing called our webinar tracker. So you can see this. It's got all our webinars, and then it's got all the information that we'll build later.
And that one is in Notion. So Note 2 is put this stuff in Notion. And we talked about how Zapier has its own tables. Yes. So when would you use Notion and when would you use Zapier's own tables?
So tables are good if you literally just want the information in a Zap. Like if you're just using it all through a Zap to like inform the next step or something like that. I like have it in a Notion because I actually like pull things from there. I like use it as almost like a task tracker. So that's kind of why I built it in Notion. Also now it gives the whole team visibility because we're all in Notion of like what's happening, where to find stuff. I can just link out to a bunch of different stuff. And like, because there's so many things that are getting created in this flow, I also have like a nice paper trail across this. Like, as you can see that webinar now, there's a bunch of links that I can go and investigate. Like if something breaks in the webinar flow, where did it break? And I have things to feed to Claude, other flows, stuff like that. So I like it because it's just a lot more accessible. But if you're like building stuff where the information is all going to be like contained in a Zap that you don't have to go find later, I'd use a table.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So creates the data source item. So it creates this row right there. It drops the transcript from there into the actual Notion file. So if you need to go find it later, which is great because I've lost transcripts many times, pulls all the text out of the transcript, does the basic webinar analysis, which I can show you kind of what the output looks for that.
Yeah, let's see the output.
Yeah, right here. So it does how to keep your demos fresh, which I'll show you what the actual full ready to go blog post looks like in a second. But it just does like a really general analysis on like who the speakers are, what the key themes are, the chapters. The chapters are really nice because it breaks it down in like consumable chunks because this will be fed to an LLM later, just to like make sure that you can run through the transcript efficiently and like it's not just searching for random things. Like you've got like this gardening analogy which powers the entire blog post in the future. And then it pulls out notable quotes, any frameworks that they're talking about, like obviously a lot of webinars you're talking about like how you do something, the process of something, and then any playbooks, buyer problems. So like what are pain points that we're talking about, contrarian points, which I really like. That powers a pitch in the future where it's like what is the opposite of like what they're talking about? Can we create content around there? And then all the evidence of like data points, quotes. So it's like a lot of stuff. And then the blog angle start as those inform like the pitches in the future. So it's like a lot of stuff that gets kind of extracted from the transcript before we even start doing any real writing, creation, anything. And then it's a two step. So it does a basic analysis right here, and then a detailed, and then writes that page, adds it to the content tracker,
Oh,
and then it
so that's
creates
super
structure.
interesting. So why do you do a basic analysis and then a detailed one? Why not do the detailed one right away?
Because it's such a big piece of content, it'll get tripped up. I tried having it all in one, and just that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to like break it down into smaller pieces. And like with
Hmm.
this, it's easier to like really focus on just basic stuff like who are the speakers? What are they talking about? How long is it? What are the general themes? And then the detailed one goes in and looks for things like the frameworks that are a lot more detailed, and you can get really tight on it. So it's breaking it into two steps so the outputs are better as a whole instead of trying to do it all in
Yeah.
one big step.
I like this. It's basically, I mean, just like a human. If you give them a whole bunch to do all at the same time, they might get overwhelmed. So you're
Yeah.
just breaking it into two steps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of the same thing. Is like that's what I really like about Zapier is you can just chain a bunch of stuff together and then bring it all together like I did in the analysis page, which is used later. And then a lot of this is just adding to the content tracker, so I have a paper trail and I can work backwards if anything breaks. Next step is it actually creates three pitches, so it goes through the transcript and the webinar analysis and writes three pitches that are based on some prompt engineering stuff that I give it. So it'll look for like frameworks, it'll look for like just like a summary of the whole webinar. Cause like some of the webinars we have are just like we talk about a lot of stuff, but it doesn't really actually like have a singular through line. So those are good for those ones. And then the third one is like that wildcard one that I told you about, that it just kind of goes crazy and like takes a really, really interesting angle on it, which is kind of a couple of the outputs that I've used for like blog posts, because it's just like, oh, this is so different than what you would expect.
So before we go there, this is why you're kind of a technical marketer, but you've also done all this stuff manually, and you can really see your thought process here, right? This idea that you kind of break apart and analyze the webinar. Okay, great. But just the idea that you're going to create three different pitches out of it it's just like a smart and clever thing to do, right? Like, it's not like you just said, "Oh, here's just one idea." You just create three different ones and three different angles. So yeah, that's very clever. And then how do you know if these pitches are going to be good? And maybe you don't have it in the workflow, but in general, how might you take a pitch and say, "Well, I know this is going to really resonate or not."
Usually just because like I think the content of the webinars is pretty good, that it's not like it's so random that it's going to struggle to create like a framework of a pitch. There's a couple ones where I'm just like, this is boring. You're just saying like a very common demo problem, stuff like that. But like every time I've run it, I've come out with at least one pitch, which would once we get through this three-legged one, which is about to be four, which I'll tell you about the fourth leg soon. But it gets expanded. So it goes from a pitch and then it goes to a full outline. So the pitch is I forget, 100 words, 200 words, something like that. It might be, oh no, the pitch is just bullet points. And then once you get into this pitch leg, it expands all of these into actual like full outlines. So let's just look at like,
And I
we'll
love
look at
it
the
that every time, yeah, it does something, it's putting it in Notion.
Yeah, so I can come look at this. And that's what I like too, is like if it just outputted one pitch or if it just went and just wrote a whole blog post, I would be like, where did any of this come from? I can go back and see like, oh, it focused on this because back in step 7 where we're doing the analysis, it was like, oh, we were really high on this gardener's guide to demos, a metaphor driven analysis, which actually became the full blog post, but it's just so unique that it cut through the noise of like what other things are being published in the demo space. So like what I also like about this is if you have three pitches and they're all just kind of meh, you can find good stuff in all of them and kind of like create like a Franken pitch, which I haven't done yet, but I can see the process of how you do that.
Okay, so it takes a pitch and it like builds it out
Cor-
fully and then puts that in
Full into an
Notion.
outline. Yep. Yeah, and then just does that three different times, which I like having three pitches because you can really dial it into three different things. In the future, I'll probably expand it and make it more a little bit more loosey goosey, so it could have like 5 or 7, and it picks like 3 from the list. But like this is really tight and it works well right now. I think in the future I'll add more variability, but I just want it to kind of work now, just because we need content. We can get fancy with it in the future. Once it writes all the pitches, it sends a Slack to me, which I'm working on a LinkedIn post that it's like, this is the only Slack I like getting, and it's just a screenshot of the Slack showing all the pitches. And then I just dive into there. There's another flow that if I don't like what the pitch is, I can drop it in there and it'll take it from a pitch to like a 1,200 word blog post using the transcript, and then I'll go into Claude. But most of the time, I've just been able to dump it into Claude with the transcript, kind of create a project with all our messaging docs, all of our pain point analysis stuff, and it'll get to a 2,000 word article in an hour. Like I was doing that this morning. We have a new blog post that I'm going to ship to design. Probably 2 hours total work.
Very cool. Okay, so there's two other paths though. So there's you can grab the
Yeah.
pitches, build them into blog posts.
Yes. And then there's pitch, there's clips, and there's social. So the clips one we can talk about now. It goes through the webinar and looks kind of based on like the analysis and the pitches. It looks at the full webinar and tries to like identify what would make good clips. It works pretty good. I did some improvement of it yesterday just because I wasn't loving how the time code stuff works. But I think that's mostly because I've been giving it like transcripts that aren't super tight, that are more just like they're just kind of a little bit messy. So once I fix that, which I'll add a step probably in the next build that normalizes all the time codes. But yeah, it creates a clip doc, and then I can show you that now. So that right here gives you a nice little clip doc with like clip candidates. So it's got all the clip candidates of it, and then a description of why we should care about it. And when I go to edit these in Descript, I can drop these in. Actually, let me show you the updated one because I like it a lot better. I think it's this one because
Yeah, so
I rebuilt the
basically
prompt.
for people who are not seeing it, it gives you the start time, the end time, the duration, the hook line. And then I
Yeah,
guess like when you're looking at this, I mean, if I were looking at this, I would look at the hooks and I would say like, which one grabs my attention? And maybe
exactly.
that's the first candidate that when I go to Descript or another editing tool, like that's maybe the one I'll start with.
Exactly. Yeah, I what I've been doing is just copying and pasting this kind of like the whole thing right here. And Descript has, I think their bot is called like Underlord, which is so funny. And I just drop it in and then I say, hey, cut this clip at 30 seconds on either side just so I can make sure it's not like an awkward transition or anything. And then I got a clip. So I made like 7 or 8 yesterday just
Oh,
doing
I
this.
didn't know that. So I heard that Descript was building its own AI bot. So they did. So you can literally copy this exact format and paste it
Yeah.
into Descript and it'll grab the clip for you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, I would love if, but I don't know if I want to have that unrestricted access to Descript where it could just be another step and cut everything. Because I think you do burn some solid credits when you're doing this in Descript. And
Right.
I can see it going haywire a little bit. So I like having these human in the loop ones. So I could be like, oh, this is the one I care about. C3 I care about. C5
But
and
Ryan,
dump them in.
theoretically, it's possible. Like, could you theoretically get Zapier to build the clips in Descript?
I don't know the Descript. What's funny about the CEO's people is the CEO of Descript commented because I said I would love if I could just have a Descript one, and then I never heard anything, and I just assumed that it didn't exist, but it might.
I know it might burn some tokens, but just the thought of even that being automated, I mean, there's something really cool about that.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, we need clips. Like we've got good stuff hidden in all. We've got gold in them hills with all these things, so we gotta push it across the entire kind of like spectrum of social and video and blog content.
I'll give a little shout out to the folks at Riverside. They do create some clips automatically for so when we do the This New Way podcast episodes, they do create some clips. However, I don't know how they create them. We don't have much control over it. What I like about what you're doing is if you have again, you have your content marketing brain, and so you'll know what kind of things will work, who your audience is, so you can write the prompt in the way that it's going to work best for you, and it's not generic. So your clips will
Exactly.
probably end up being much better.
Yeah. Or just easier to find too. Like sometimes they miss on timing, but like I know what they're looking for and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this sounds great." And I'll just have to move it like 30 seconds either way. I like it a lot, and just like being able what I also like about this build is I can edit all of it so quickly. Like I can go into each of the prompts of the AI by Zapier prompts and just be like, that output wasn't great. Let's go in and change it really quick. I don't know if you could do that in another tool where you could be
Hmm.
this quick to update, this quick to ship like changes to it and see it in 10 minutes when it runs again, or 7 or 5 or whatever.
I love this. So I see in the other one, you're basically doing something very similar, but creating
Yeah.
content for LinkedIn and maybe
Yes.
Twitter and stuff like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah. So one thing that I have found building this is like getting the social cadence right in this flow is not impossible, but it's just kind of like you're fighting a battle. You're not going to get exactly ready to post. So what I did instead was build out this approach where it focuses on different social angles. So again, it goes for the framework, the data point, the wild card, the hot take, or the quote, and it just builds kind of like little mini prompts that you can give to Claude to say, hey, go expand this into a full LinkedIn post. And I found
Oh,
that
I like
is
that.
a yeah, it's a lot more effective than trying to like engineer a share, because again, you don't want 5 shares that are just meh. You want like 2 that are good. So you
Yeah.
pick the 2 that you really like, you dump them in, you work on those instead of trying to like get those 5 to ready to publish status.
Very interesting. Rather than, I like this from a thinking perspective, rather than telling it, hey, just go write a LinkedIn post, you're
Yeah,
really breaking it down and you're saying, give me X many angles, X many frameworks. So that, again, this is the human in the loop. Obviously, you're really good at content marketing. So you see this stuff and it's like you hire this intern, it gives you a bunch of options, and then you can take that and expand it. I really like that.
and then so the fourth one that's work in progress now that haven't had time to build, but I want to build a fourth kind of leg that does this email newsletter drip. So, like you said, no one's going to sit through. Not everyone's going to want to sit through a webinar. They'll definitely sign up for it. So once you send that webinar out to people, you kind of have to have like a nurture campaign too to do something with it. So it'll build the nurture campaign where it pulls out those little insights in 100 or 200 words, and you can drip it out for 7 days or 14 or as long as you want, just to kind of give another way for someone to consume it without having to hit blog posts, social, all that stuff.
Couple of things that are occurring to me as you're doing this. I feel that if people are doing things like this, they're probably just using prompts and going back and forth with ChatGPT or
100%.
Claude.
That's what I did
And,
too.
and
Yeah,
look,
it was so bad.
sometimes, yeah, I mean, I do that too. And so, but now I'm seeing this and I'm like, why would I prompt myself like, like, why would I do it myself? I can just, like,
Yeah,
once I figure out what the prompts are, then I can just put it together like this and it can just happen every single time. So you don't have to sit back there, type a prompt, get an answer, type another prompt, get an answer. So this is just going to string everything well together. My second question, though, was on the prompts. I assume that you write something, and I know Zapier has a feature where it can make your prompt better. Do you get
yeah.
AI to write your prompts, or what's your typical approach to get to something that's really good?
It's a mix of both. I usually lean on AI to do like the JSON stuff just because like that's not my bag. I know how to use it, but just like making sure everything's lined up correctly, I'll use that. But I do use ChatGPT or Claude just to like, here's what I'm thinking to do, here's the inputs, here's that kind of stuff. And like it'll give me an okay prompt, but I'll go in and change things and I'll make it more demo stacky or I'll make it more like branded. But yeah, it's a little bit of both. I haven't found value in the like improve your prompt just because I think my prompts are pretty good already. And it's just like we'll add like formatting or something. But I can see if someone's just like starting with a 1 sentence prompt and they hit improve it and that makes like a big one. I've seen that happen too. So
Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the episode. One of the common things that we hear is, hey, you all talk about all these different tools, you walk through these demos. Sometimes it's hard for me to follow along. We decided to do recently was take all the things that we talk about, put them in a weekly newsletter. We literally list all the tools, we link to them, and any demo that we walk through, we break it down step by step, put it in this newsletter so it's super easy for you to follow along. And the other nice thing is that if there's someone on your team that you think could benefit, they're working on that subject area, they could use a little bit of AI injection into their workflow, send them the newsletter, send them that particular episode. We make it super easy to do that. It's free to sign up. All you have to do is go to thisnewway.com, enter your email address, and you'll get this weekly email from us. Hope you enjoy it. With that said, let's go back to the episode. I did want to ask you two questions that are very relevant. One is like this topic that we talked about, and you can kind of like, if you take a step back and notice that you were doing this, which is you were breaking things apart. And one of the things that you told me that really resonated with me is that a lot of people think AI is this magic black box and you just feed it things and it's going to give you the perfect output. But you don't operate that way, right?
No, I have this caveman thought that I tell people where it's like people expect AI that you can drop something big in it and it'll get something big out. So something polished, something ready to publish. You put a video and you put a transcript, you're going to get a blog post out. But there's like 20 steps in between that you need to manipulate, that you need to extract, that you need to do all these things. So I tell them it needs to go big, small, big, and it goes obviously the transcript, then it needs to be all those small little inputs, and then you can make something big. So I think there's a just a misunderstanding on like what AI can do. And like I think I even posted on LinkedIn today. It's like the closer you get to building with AI, you see how many limitations exist, but then you can build around them once you understand how many limitations they are. But if you expect it to be this magic content box, you're kind of in for a world of hurt, and your content will just kind of like continue to deteriorate.
So I think this is what happens sometimes is you try something and then you get frustrated because it just looks like AI slop. But I love that you said that, just to clarify and for people to know that there's 20 steps in between. And if you break it apart and you really think about it,
There might be more. Yeah, like V10 that I built. Yeah, there might be like 50 steps, but at least I get stuff that works. Yeah.
so, and then that's my other question, because there was this period in time where there was rumors that Google was punishing AI content. And so, some of this stuff is AI content. Like that's what we're creating from content that we own, which is, our own webinar and stuff. So how do you think about this? Like, do you think that the content that you produce out of this is so good that it's not going to be punished and people will actually like reading it?
I bet if I gave you 10 pieces of content, you couldn't pick out 9 of the AI ones. It's that good. Like the stuff that I'm shipping to our subject matter experts to review, they're like, "Oh my god, this is great." And it's just like you kind of just have to do the work too. Like I said, I'm not going to get ready to publish stuff out of this workflow, but I'll get 75 to 90%, and then I have to just spend the time making sure that it flows, making sure that there's quotes in it, that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you could see, and it's like good thought leadership content too. Like, and that's another thing that people don't realize is like the inputs also have to be good. So if you're just like putting bad like if your site is like full of like really, really deep SEO driven content that has no soul, and you're like, oh, I want to turn this into thought leadership, it's going to really struggle. And it's just going to sound like kind of what you said, like the AI content.
I love that you said that, and for people to hear that, because it is a myth. But once you know what to do, and again, like I hope people got a glimpse of the sophistication that people like yourself are operating in, and so that's how you make the content really, really good. And so, thank you for showing all this to us. The final question I always leave everyone with is, what are you most excited about in the next 12 months? Anything that you quite can't do with AI today that maybe you will be able to do, or any trend that's an exciting trend? What's the most exciting for you?
I'm just one for myself. I'm excited to see where I am in 6 months from now, because where was I 6 months ago? Am I going to be just like building insane workflows that power entire companies? I don't know, maybe. But I'm also excited to see where they go with better like token optimization, because like webinars are big. Like if I didn't have to build all these steps, I wouldn't do them. But putting a webinar into a prompt, even if it's like 4.1 nano, which does really good with big tokens and big file size, it struggles sometimes. So like if I didn't have to do all these kind of like smaller input manipulations to like work around the AI stuff, like my job would be a lot easier, but so would everybody else's.
That's such a great like ending right there, which is I'm excited to see what I'll be able to do in 6 months. The growth rate is, I mean, again, when you invest in this stuff, it's crazy how much you can grow. So Ryan, thank you so much for doing this.
Awesome. This is amazing. So glad I could show it off, and you could see how cool it is.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of This New Way. If you like the content, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you can get notified when we post the next episode. See you next time.